The last time I went fishing, it was with my dad. It seems like a long, long time ago, but I remember that day. It's kind of hazy in the morning. Took a little while for the sun to burn off. I borrowed a boat from a friend of mine. It was just a little 12-foot John boat with the 15 horsepower Merc on it, but I remember that day. Not in minute details, but just some scattered pictures in my mind. We loaded up, headed across the lake to Dad's favorite cove, and started fishing. Didn't catch much, I remember that. A couple little perch. Had some problems getting the hook out, I remember that. But I think mostly what I remember is the talking, the conversation. Somebody would look at a tree or the water or the fish or the bait, and we'd make some comment, and Dad, as was his habit, would say, wasn't it great for God to make the water or the sun for us to enjoy? We'd sit and fish a little bit more, and Dad would fiddle with his pocket watch. Never thought that was a great idea in the middle of the lake, but then somebody would say something else, and the conversation would just shoot off in wild directions, and we'd talk about life and love and just stuff, and Dad would tell me stories from who knows where about just his life and stuff he'd learned and places he's been. Then we'd sit for a little bit longer, and Dad would fiddle with his pocket watch, and we'd fish a little bit longer. It was a good day. My dad was just starting to come down with Alzheimer's disease, but he was all there that day, remembered everything. Started getting rapidly worse after our fishing trip, and I think it was probably 6 months later that we had to put him in a nursing home. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. Went back a couple days later, and it wasn't too bad. He was talking about God, fiddling with his watch and joking with the staff. And I'm like, oh, what have we done? What are you doing here? You should be out in your garden, going fishing. But came back the next day and was confused once again. And it was a hard time. He died a couple months after that. I've took to carrying his pocket watch around when I miss him a lot. It doesn't work, but somehow comforting. I've got a son who was born about the same time Dad passed. Kid thinks I hung the moon. Sometimes we watch Andy Griffith reruns together. The kid will talk just like my father. The other day he asked if we could go fishing like Andy and Opie did. I'm looking around for a little boat. Gonna take my boy fishing and see what comes to the surface. If you've still got a dad, maybe you ought to take him out for Father's Day. Let him talk a little bit. See what comes to the surface. You might learn something.
Alex, how am I doing? There we go. Right in line with being present, and I appreciate that, which is what I'm going to share today. My name is Jason Wells. Heather and I have been members here for a couple years, and Roger heard me tell a story a couple months ago at the One Project, one of the events, and asked me to share it for Father's Day. And so I'll do my best to take you through that and share it. It's going to be not a not a complex talk. There's three things that I'm hoping to share with you today. One is to be present, one is to be still, and one is to know He is God. I'm going to take you through those things and share our story and my story of being a father. This text has always been dear to me. Be still and know that I am God. And I put the emphasis on the word I because it's very easy to try to be in control and to think that I can orchestrate this outcome and I can stay in control, and it's hard to let God take the steering wheel of our lives at times and do that. I want to say hi to Patrick and Maureen. He said he'd be watching. I think they're in Lincoln, Nebraska today. And also say hi to my parents, who I know are watching from British Columbia today, and I think Heather's parents are watching from California. My story starts on Tuesday, February 8, 2011. Our own Alex Bryan had planned an event with 4 friends in Atlanta. And it was going to become the first one project. And 120 of us gathered together from around, actually the world. Some came from England and Australia, at a hotel in Atlanta. And Alex talked to us and others talked. And it was an amazing 2 days just celebrating Christ and really wanting Him to lead in the Adventist church. And as I was driving back from that event, I'm going to get through this. I promised I wouldn't embarrass our kids. As I was driving back, Heather called. She said, I don't have good news. And we were in the middle of our 3rd pregnancy. And she'd had some scary ultrasounds. And so she went to a specialist up at Mayheck. And they said, you have a condition called vasa previa. And it's a situation where your placenta has split into 2. There's 2 lobes. And you've got these veins going over the cervix, and it's pretty dangerous. If your daughter was to kick those veins, it would end her life in a matter of minutes and could end your life. So we started learning everything we could about vasa previa, and it was needed that Heather went on bed rest up at Mission. And so at week 29, Heather was put in a room. As they did more tests, they learned she had what Dr. Nathan Williams, who was our physician, called the jackpot. He said, not only does she have vasa previa, she has something called placenta percreta, where one of those placental lobes is actually growing out of your uterus, and it's now out into your body. A very, very serious condition. And so this was our room for about 40 days. I did this with an iPhone. It's just a long scan. But in those 40 days, I had to learn to be present. And so we had, Sydney was about 4 at the time, Landon was 2. I snuck a waterfall in on a skateboard and hooked it up, and it just had a nice sound. You can see that waterfall right there. It was just one of those that you'd kind of see at a spa. I'm sure we broke all kinds of compliance, Joint Commission codes, but they were very gracious to let us have it in our room there. But I covered the walls with photos because I just wanted Heather to be present, and I needed to be present. I wanted our kids, and so I took every photo I could come up with and covered those walls for those 40 days that we were going to spend up at Mission as we waited and just prayed that Hayden stayed still. They had us right outside of an OR in case something did go wrong, that we could, as quickly as we could, try to save both of their lives. But it was a tough time. It was very tough for me as a father and as someone who, for a living, operates things and fixes things. My job is when physicians get frustrated, I come in and fix their problem and try to do my best that I can and lead a team that does that. And so it was very tough to not be in control of this situation, to know that there's nothing I could do to orchestrate a certain outcome. I had to be still and then know that He is God and just continue to pray and do everything we can. It was fun to see the nurses come in our room and physicians. Our room became kind of famous up at Mission. And people would come in, and there was a rocking chair in the corner, and they would just stay. And nurses would come in, and they would take their breaks in our room. They would come in and rub Heather's feet. And it really was a healing environment that was a special place. And they would just see our life story kind of on the walls of the room. and again, working on giving Heather hope and something incredibly to fight for. The team was great. They wrote Hayden on the board at each shift change, knowing who Hayden was going to become, and that was special to see that, her name written up on the board. We picked the name Hayden because there were two fun things. When you look online and research Hayden, it means born of the fields of Heather is the Welsh English, and the German is Hellion, Hayden of Hades. So we went with the Welsh English, obviously, but it was fun. We thought how perfect, born of the fields of Heather. And so Hayden was named. And again, where I work is Park Ridge Health, and the ER team worked on a quilt. And they created a quilt for us that we were able to put on our bed for that entire time. For the over month that we were up there, and that was just a very special thing to have, to make our environment as much as home as possible. Heather left that room only, I think, once or twice. There was a balcony they let us go to down the hall, and Heather had some outside time for about 20 minutes, but you can imagine being in one room and not being able to leave it for that amount of time was pretty wild. At the beginning of the time, I got these 3 buckets that didn't have any sprouts coming up, and we put them in the window, and by the end of the 40 days, we had full plants. And it was kind of fun to see those grow as we went through time. We didn't anticipate this, so you can imagine we didn't have quite the shopping done and things like that, so I got to do the shopping. And so I got to pick out the outfits, and I hung them in the room for Heather to see, and just said, hey, these are things Hayden's going to wear one day. And it was just fun to be able to do that. My parents came from the West Coast, and Heather's parents came, and they were incredibly supportive as they helped us raise our 2 kids as I slept up at the hospital and tried to keep my job going, and even brothers and sisters. Heather's brother, I chatted a lot, and so we really kept people connected. But again, what I learned so much was being present and giving Heather time with each of her kids. This is a shot with the door kind of cracked open. But just spending time. I would say for Heather and I will be married 18 years on Tuesday. And for the first, easy to say 10, 15 years, it was tough to be present. It's hard when your name with your kids is Dad, Dad, Dad. When it takes 3 or 4 times to respond, you know that you're not as present as you need to be. And so that's something that we've really worked on in these 40 days in that environment. Really taught us to slow down and absolutely be present. One of the things that was tough about the experience is watching, your wife write cards to each of your kids, just in case. And I was able to do that for Heather, and that's the card that she's reading there. I want to share this. Mindful or mindful? And I think this image is so powerful when you think of the things that we have going on in our lives, that our minds are racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. We're thinking about work, we're thinking about home, we're thinking about something else, and this mind of a child that is so full with the right things. I just want to let that set in. It's just a tremendous image of, are we mindful or are we mindful? And what do we do to stay present in that moment? As Roger shared with the fishing, what is it we do? It's not about the fish, it's not about the hook or the pole or the lure. It's being present in that moment and the interactions that take place. I want to share a video with you that I think will hit home. And I know that those of us that reach for our phones 100, 200 times a day, this will resonate powerfully with you. Gail, if you'd share that video.
พื่อเปิดรับคนรอบข้างบ้าง D-Tech เชื่อในความพอดี
Good stuff. We have to leave America to find a video about being present, but just a really powerful video from Thailand. So, the Green Journal is the journal for OBGYNs that Dr. Williams and others use for just the latest cutting-edge research. And so Hayden's condition was so unique, and Heather's condition in the situation, that to see both those issues in one individual hadn't really been written about. But it was interesting. In March, a story came out and said, you know what, if you have a condition like vasa previa, the new research suggests go ahead and do the C-section at week 34, 34.0. Historically, it had been week 35. They say, you know what, you need to keep your daughter in, your son in, as long as you can. But at this March, this issue came out, and Dr. Williams had, obviously read it and talked about it and said, guys, there's new research, and we need to move this up, and we need to do this C-section for Heather and for Hayden at week 34. And so we were probably one of the first in the country to have it done at week 34. Obviously, 40 weeks is a full-term baby, so we knew we were going to be 4 weeks early. So the night before, this picture here, Dr. Williams is on the right. You can see right above Heather leading a care conference, and this is probably one of the most comprehensive care conferences that's been done at Mission. We had physicians from 6 or 7 different specialties. I think there are 12 people in the room here, and it was amazing to see people come together under his leadership and just talk about tomorrow. What are we going to do tomorrow? How's it going to go? And what is every step of this process as we go after this situation and we drive the best possible outcome we can. My boss, the CEO of Park Ridge Health, and our administrative team at Park Ridge came up the night before. This is Heather's mom and dad. And that morning, it started about 5:30. Heather went down to interventional radiology. They put balloons in her iliac arteries so they could inflate them if they needed to stop the blood loss, because what Dr. Williams and the team were going to have to do was, when you're cutting on placenta that's gotten out of a uterus, it's just like cancer, and it just grows, and you cut it and it just bleeds, and very, very difficult to stop the bleeding. We had 27 people in the OR. Took this picture is he and Dr. Graybill, who's now serving at an Adventist hospital in Malawi. The two of them were our main surgeons, but we had, I think, 3 or 4 surgeons with their hands in Heather, but an interventional radiology team, a NICU team. One of our dear friends, Ronnie, she's on the NICU team, and she was there ready to catch Hayden for the moment that they got her out. This is Hayden coming out. She's got her fist clenched in victory. She made it. She stayed still for those 5 weeks, which we appreciate. Rushed her away to the NICU, and then the real work began, trying to save Heather. I went up to the NICU to be with Hayden and was up there praying that all would go well with Heather. And it was about 2.5 hours before the moment that we got the call. And this photo is that moment of 2 fathers. That Heather was going to make it, and that all was going well. You bet. About 6 hours after surgery, Heather had stabilized enough where they were willing to push her up into the NICU and actually take her bed all the way up in the NICU so she could really touch Hayden for the first time. And this is Hayden up in the NICU. Pretty special moments. Heather had a central line in for an entire week. She had lost so much blood in this process and was incredibly weak. And obviously the surgery was a tremendous surgery. Dr. Williams had to cut her bladder in half and put it back together and take out her uterus and so many things to keep her going. But I was very proud of her, of how she hung in there with Hayden. But this is Hayden, just a couple days later, still up in the NICU. She's come off of the machine. Pretty adorable. But for me, again, to be still, to slow down for those 40 days was an incredible gift because I don't slow down very well. And so having such a big crisis forced me to say, you know what? Park Ridge doesn't matter. It's all good, whatever happens. And just to be present with Heather, to be present with Landon and Sydney, and do everything I could, working with Dr. Williams and others, to just trust that this was in God's hands. And I know things don't always end well, and things clearly didn't end well for many fathers this week in Orlando. And I know that's not God's plan, but he takes horrific circumstances and finds ways to orchestrate better outcomes. But be still and know that I am God. This was a tremendous learning experience for me to realize I can't drive this outcome. I can't fix this situation. And I had to be still and know that he was God. Through that, knowing to be the type of father I want to be is just to inspire being good, to inspire making a difference for others. And got one more video to share with you that I will know touch your heart. Again, we got to go outside America to see it, but you'll be moved by this amazing story of good.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวันเขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลยไม่ได้รวยขึ้นไม่ได้ออกทีวีไม่มีใครรู้จักไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้นเพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิมในชีวิตคุณอะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
ไทยประกันชีวิตเชื่อในความดี
Isn't that great? So not everyone has a chance to be a father, but we all have the chance to do good and to inspire others and to just make such a tremendous difference. I want to wrap up with this theology of Snoopy. Someday we will all die, Snoopy. True, but on all other days we will not. Good stuff. Hayden, if you'd come up and say hi to everybody. Don't be shy. Heather will drag her up here. Come on. This is Hayden, who I know many of you have met. She turned 5 this year. Don't be shy. Hey, stand up. Good job. All right. So, very, very shy. And I do see Dr. Nathan Williams in the back. Dr. Williams, everyone knows you, but thank you so much for what you've done for my family. It's tremendous. So we feel very blessed. So be still and know He is God, and be present in every moment. Have an amazing Father's Day as you celebrate your fathers, those of you that are fathers. There's a gift in the lobbies of both places. I think may even say dads on the side, but it's for everybody. So enjoy that and have an amazing Sabbath, and thank you all. God bless you. And there is potluck. There is potluck.